Okay, so today we're sheeting decking the garage roof. The other side's already done there, so a couple of things when you're installing sheathing on a roof. One thing I didn't mention, because I did have a video on sheathing when I sheathed the roof over on the house. But you know, there's a little bit different situation. A few more things maybe I didn't mention on the other video. Again, this is more for people that are new at this, or maybe they're building their own garage or whatever. Anyway, with OSB, there's two sides. There's a rough side and a smooth side. On the rough side has lines that are put in at the factory, but I don't know why, but they never seem to put all the lines necessary for a sheet. I mean, even if you look at this one has different lines than this one, and none of them have all the lines. They're always short a few lines, and those lines are supposed to be either for 16-inch centers or 24-inch centers. So these are your 16 when you're doing stand-up sheets, when the sheets are running the same way, like if you're putting them on a wall. All right. So, and then they also have lines for when you're putting them perpendicular to the framing. So the lines. I don't know why this thing was not focusing. This was waiting because it's like out of focus. Anyway, yeah. So then it would put lines. There should be lines every 16 inches and every 24 inches, depending on if you're doing 16-inch centers or 24-inch centers. But like this one's got the two lines here for 16-inch center. It doesn't have one for the 24-inch center. And then this one has one line for the 24-inch center, one line for the 16-inch center. There should be another 16-inch center line here. It says, so I don't know. It's all within the same order, the same bundle of plywood of OSB. So I don't know. See here. So here they have a 16, or no, there's a 16 here, and then there's another 16 here. As you can see, it's lining up where it's supposed to. And then over this one, it doesn't have it, so it's missing. And then it's got this one, and then this one here is for a 24-inch center, because here's the edge of the sheet. See, now this one is also missing, but it's got a 24-inch one for a 24-inch center, and then another one for a 24-inch center here. But then this one is missing. So anyway, it's kind of frustrating because when they're there, they save a ton of time because you don't have to think about where your framing is. You just can pop the nails in really quick. Of course, as you get better at it, you can guess. When I'm nailing through with something that's going to show, like the garage. Okay, I'm drywalling the garage walls, so it doesn't matter. But the garage ceiling is going to show, and so when I get nails, they're called shiners in the trade. A shiner is when a nail goes through the plywood, but it doesn't hit any framing, and you can see it sticking out when you're inside. Those are called shine. We call them shiners. Okay, I don't like the way they look, so I take them out. I mean, if you're going to drywall, it doesn't matter. Although I think in some places where they have inspection, I believe, you have to take them out. But anyway, here you don't have to. But I take them out because I think they look ugly. They look tacky. Especially if you miss a bunch of them. I don't miss that many, just here and there, because I've been doing this for a while, so I can kind of eyeball it, especially when you're going this way on the sheet. But you can also feel when you miss with a nailing gun. It makes a different sound, and it usually sinks in quicker, or not quicker, further into the sheet. I think down that side I only had two shiners, 2 or 3 on that whole side, and this side I've had 1 so far. But anyway, yeah, so I take them out because they're kind of tacky looking. Anyway, and then in case you don't know about nail guns, they all have they're different. This is a Milwaukee. I like Senko the best, but most of the guys in the trades use Hitachi. I don't like them. It's personal preference. I like Senko. I wasn't able to get one. My Senko broke, and I need one quick, and this Milwaukee is pretty good. Anyway, so this one has an adjuster on it, so you can adjust this for the depth of the nail. So the more you adjust this, that pushes this part here down, the farther the piston is from the sheet, the less the nail goes in. So when you're doing sheeting, you don't want your nail heads buried, so you like them to kind of be on the surface, right? You don't want them buried down in there. In a lot of places, it's against code. I mean, you'll get called if you have a nailing inspection. You say, hey, your nails are on, especially in areas where there's seismic issues, like on the West Coast, which I used to frame, and I lived on the West Coast for a while. Anyway, yeah, so you can adjust like this one here, you just twist this. So you rotate it one way, and then it brings this down. The farther this goes down, the farther the piston is away from the wood that you're nailing into, so the shallower the nail goes in. So I've got it set down pretty far so that these don't sink in. But then when you're framing, you want maximum, so then I'll adjust this the other way. It'll pull this way up so that this is up basically as far as it'll go, and that way you have maximum penetration when you're especially when you're toe nailing, and then even when you're just flat nailing. It's just because then you don't care if the nails go in a quarter inch into the framing member. Anyway, so that's for you guys that don't know a lot about nail guns, or I've seen guys use nail guns for quite a while. They aren't professionals, but they're homeowners or whatever, and they don't realize that you can adjust the depth of the nails. So anyway, so that's for sheeting. See, so you get them, you want them to be pretty even with the surface. They're not going to all be perfect because wood has different hardness and all, but at least you can get it close. Now, another situation I had here is that I put these overhangs on before I stood the walls up. So this, after I got them on, these had a bit of a bow. So when you're just standing down, where's my hand? I can't even see. Oh, there it is. Oh, there's the hand. Anyway, so when you're standing down on the ground and you look up the rake, you would see a slight bow in it because this wall here bowed, so this bowed. Right now I've got it all leveled and everything, but from the peak to the bottom there was a slight bow. It was probably out maybe 3/8 of an inch total. So in order to pull that over, what I do is I get a block. So on my first, so this is outside wall, and then on my first roof rafter in from the wall, I cut a block here about 3/4 of an inch short of the distance from here to here, and then from this side I nailed this block, so it's nailed to this, but it's loose here. And then when I put this sheet on, I nail a bunch of nails here to hold this so it doesn't move this way. One nail is going to do is just put in a bunch, so that this is not going to move. Because what I did is I took I got a 4-inch drywall screw, and I screw right through here and into here, and what it does is it sucks this over, and this doesn't move because you've got it nailed really well here. And then it moves this over so you can get the bow out of it. And then what I do is I walk the plate here up to the peak, and then I just eye down. I've got a good eye because I've been doing this for a long time, so I actually really, when you look at stuff from that angle, when you eye stuff, you can see when it's out, when it's bowed, when it's crooked, right? So then I eye down here, I make sure that it's straight. If it's not, I come back, I screw in a little further, I pull it over a little more. I mean, I pulled this in about 3/8 of an inch because this is about a 3/8 inch gap, and it was about 3/4 when I started, and now it's right where it's supposed to be. So what I'll do now is I'll nail the heck out of it here and here. I'll basically just nail the entire sheet off, get all the nailing done on it, and then I'll back the screw out, take the screw out, take this off because I don't want to leave it there. It looks ugly from underneath. It's not necessary, and I just move it to where I need it again. So I'll take this, pull the nails out, and I'll probably have to. Maybe one more time here. I'll need to bring in there's still a slight bow up here. I'll pull it in maybe 1/8 of an inch. I'll eyeball it, make sure it's perfectly straight all the way down. And then when I do the next row of plywood, so I do the next row of plywood, I'll be 4 feet up, and then I'll probably put the block here somewhere. Do the same thing, only not as much. It'll be less, maybe 1/8 of an inch or something, because I can see there's still a very slight bow up here closer to the top. And then do the same thing and then nail it off, back to screw out, take the block out, and then that's a way of moving this over. It's a carpenter trick, I guess, if you want to call it that. That way you can straighten your rake, because you're going to see it from the street, and then it looks bad. It just looks really bad. I mean, I've seen a lot of professional framers. It's off and they don't notice or they don't care, whatever it is. And so anyway, but you want to do it right. It doesn't take that much longer. It's an extra, maybe less than an hour for the entire garage. Spent one guy doing that, moving this block around in a few places and getting them straightened out. Anyway, yeah, so that's that. And then I run my sheets long, I snap a line or draw a pencil line, whatever, and then I cut my stuff off up here. It's easier for me. Now, the next row I'm going to start in 4 feet. So this piece I'll pre-cut, or I'll cut it off before I install it. But these ones here where there's just going to be a scrap left over, I just do that and I just run the circular saw on there and cut them off. I find it's easier. I set my saw blade so that's a 1/16 or less deeper than the thickness of the material. So this is 7/16 OSB. So it's only a 1/2 inch down. The blade is only a 1/2 inch. You always want to set your blade close to the thickness of the material you're cutting, especially in this situation, because it's easier. See, I made these temporary stands. I covered all this stuff on the house sheeting thing. In case you didn't see that video and you're seeing this one, I make these temporary stands here out of 2x4s to hold the plywood, instead of having, even if I had 2 or 3 guys here, I'd do the same thing, because either you or your helper can load this thing, and then the guys working on the roof can just be taking the sheets up as they need them. So I just make these, I throw the sheets up there. I knew I needed 9 sheets for each side of the roof, so I throw 9 sheets up. I did the other one on the other side. I moved it over here. So it's just a 2x4 and then one like this and one to hold, and maybe put a lot of nails in, because this is a lot of weight. And I'm only holding 9 sheets, but if you got to hold 20 sheets or more, you want to make sure that's not going to collapse, right? Anyway, yeah, so when I bring the sheets up here, when I have the blade set shallow, not much deeper than the thickness of the material, I cut all my sheets up here, and I can cut right over the top of the rafters, and at the most it'll go in this 1/16 or less. It's not going to hurt the rafter. You can just cut right over the top. So I bring the sheets up. If I need to cut them this way or whatever, I can go right over the top of the rafters, and instead of having a guy on the ground calling out measurements and all that, or even yourself going down measuring pieces, carrying the piece up that's cut, you just bring the full sheets up here and you just cut them right up here on top of the rafters. Don't hurt the rafters. It's just easier to do it. So, and in your sheets, once you get your first row up, your sheets aren't going to want to slide off the roof. So you just cut them as you need them up here. I just find it's easier and faster. So that's a little tip. And the other thing too, especially being that I'm working alone. I mean, my wife helps, but for this kind of stuff, she doesn't help. I put a little block here to keep the sheet from wanting to go off the roof, because it's hard. Your first row is always your hardest, and I leave my rows hanging over. This first row hangs past the 2x4 fascia, the sub fascia, because my 1x6 finish fascia, which is hardy board, it's 1x6 hardy, will go up underneath the plywood. You can run the plywood to the edge of the 2x4 and bring the finished fascia up to the top of the plywood, or you can have your plywood overhanging a bit and put it up underneath. That's the way I do it. It's half a dozen of one, 6 of the other. It's just the way I do it. Doesn't matter. Anyway, so now you're going to put your first piece up. It's real hard to hold that other end, so it's easier if you have something here to stop the piece from wanting to go off here while you're on this end of the sheet, trying to nail it and get it. You snap the chalk line. So I snapped a chalk line for my first row, and then I nailed this corner. That's being held from, in not exact perfect position, but it keeps it from wanting to fall off. And then you can walk on these rafters and get to that end, pull it up, make it meet the line, throw a nail or two. And once you get a couple of nails in, you can kind of walk on it, and then you can nail it off. So that's a little recommendation. Just have something to hold the other end, because it's real hard to hold. This is only a 4/12 pitch. I mean, if you got a 5, 6, 7, 8/12 pitch, I mean, it's impossible. It would be impossible to hold it. Especially if you're working alone. You'd have to have something to stop the one end. But even with a 4/12 pitch, I mean, it wants to, it wants to go that way. So anyway, so that's that. And always gap your sheets. At least a 16th or 8th. Always put a gap between. A lot of people don't do it, but you should, especially in humid climates, because they do grow. They grow when they absorb moisture. You know how OSB is. I mean, it gets a little bit wet and stuff just expands. So I always gap my sheets, the thickness of a nail, but I do it by eye. I don't need to put a nail in there. Let's see, what else? I think that's it. And then I use ridge vent even in the garage, because you don't want all that heat up there. I always leave the OSB back 2 inches from the edge of the ridge board. So from the edge this way, I've got 2 inches of clearance of open. So that way, on the phone's, I think it sees my hand and wants to focus on my hand. Sorry about that. Anyway, so I always leave it. I leave about 2 inches. So that way your ridge vents work real well. Some people don't use a ridge vent in the garage. I do, because like I said, it traps a lot of heat. Another thing I would do is, if I wasn't, this is a lower end house. I mean, this house is going to sell for like $200,000. If it was a more expensive house, or if you're doing your own, especially if you're not going to drywall, or any areas that are not being drywalled, what I do is I buy Radiant Barrier OSB, which is the one that has the silver finish on one side. It's like a foil. It does help with heat. That would also help your garage build up heat. It costs a little bit more. Like I said, this house is on a budget, so I'm careful how I spend my money. But let's say I wasn't going to drywall the walls. It makes the garage look nicer. It's because it's silver. It's silver on one side, so it just looks a little nicer. This is being drywalled, but this area here is going to show, and so is the underside of the roof. If this was my own house, if it was a higher end house, I would use Radiant Barrier just to make it look nicer. It just looks cleaner, nicer, brighter. It's a nice touch to put on. You're not doing it necessarily to help with the heat buildup, but you're doing it just because it makes the garage look nicer. Okay, I think that's it. Yeah, that's about it. Okay, back to work.